turning up to a site and going, oh, I didn't know that was there. I didn't see that power line that's going straight across the building, because you wouldn't do from a top down.
Yeah.
So pre-plan your mission, pre-plan your configuration, put it all in, but expect to make changes when you get to site.
Yeah, I think in some sense, when you do the mission plan or the flight plan in the office, I think there's probably two main reasons for doing it in the office. As I see it, I think you've got the first, it helps you build a mental model of what's going to happen
That's right.
on site. So, you understand where the drone is going to take off, what might be the start point for the drone, what might be the battery change points. You have some level of an understanding, so that it's not a complete surprise on site in terms of the operation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alex. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. As we've just discussed prior to starting our little podcast, we're actually going to reschedule these for the morning.
Yeah, probably have to. Yeah.
Currently it's 25 to 5. We've both been very busy.
Yeah.
And we'll do this.
Yeah.
Which is all good. Which is absolutely fine. So this is number 3.
Yes. It's number 3.
Building inspections end to end.
Yeah.
And I guess we should let people know that not only are we doing this video, we've also now got a podcast as well, which is our basically our video podcast, just transcribed to audio only.
Yeah.
Which is available on
Apple, Spotify, any of
most
podcast
places. Platforms.
Yeah. So if you want to hear us as opposed to watch us, you can do that on your favorite podcasting app.
Hey,
there you go.
Get you, Mr. Advertising. Other podcast apps are available, of course. Right. So you go. Okay, so building inspections, end to end, and how and why.
Yeah, so building inspections are really interesting. Probably the most accessible form of inspection, would you say?
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other types of inspections.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably, amongst surveys, I should think building inspections are probably the most popular, definitely the most popular type of drone inspection. Surveys are the number one, roof surveys mainly. Building inspections, I would say, other people may say I'm wrong. I would say it's probably a definite second.
Yeah. I mean, I would say compared to something like cell towers or I don't know, wind turbines, so that it's just so hard to get access to some of those things, and I think it's what we're in that industry where getting access to the site is also quite important, and there's just many more buildings out there that need inspections and surveys than some of the other infrastructure assets, and but I guess there's probably difference in the value of the job then, which we could go into, but probably for another conversation.
I would say roof inspections and building inspections are the most accessible and probably the quickest to, depending on the building, obviously, the quickest to set up and manage.
Yeah.
So I guess, to start the ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where does it all begin? So where would you start your building inspection drone workflow?
Yeah, if you're thinking about workflows, I guess everything starts with operations planning, right? So you got to make sure you're going to sort of start by understanding what the job is, what the requirements of the job are.
Yeah.
Who is it for? What does the site look like on Google Maps? Maybe building up some form of an understanding for, is it in a no-fly zone or not? What are the flying permissions needed? Thinking through, I guess, not the sort of mission or the data, but sort of the operation to start with, because that's the layer that holds everything together. And from a safety perspective, from an access perspective, from a understanding perspective of what's going to happen on the site, what drones do I need, what batteries do I need. So I guess building an understanding of that.
It's pre-planning, isn't it? Operational pre-planning. There's a lot that goes into, before you just rock up to site and get your bird in the air, so to speak. There's a lot that goes into it. So, you may have a fleet of aircraft, for example. You'd want to choose what's most suitable for that particular job. You need to check on Google Maps. You need to check your hazards, flight planning, flight restrictions, as you've said. A lot goes into operational planning before you even get to site.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess once you've nailed that in terms of building some form of an understanding, some people even do site surveys before they actually do the mission, right? So they actually rock up to the site to understand what it looks like.
Indeed.
Which is another level. I mean, if you can afford to do that, if the site is close by, maybe it's possible. But if the site is really far away, I guess the best bet you've got is Google or some form of
I mean,
data.
I know in the past I've had, I live in East Sussex, as my viewers now know. Don't come looking for me. I have had previous jobs that have been in Somerset, for example, which is miles away, and I can't go to site and have a look and then go, okay, cool, drive home 3 days later, go and shoot it. So I would need to pre-plan that, and check every aspect before I get in the car and drive down there, make sure it's possible.
Yeah. And once you've got a good handle on the site, though, I mean, what is the next thing that you typically do in the workflow? What do you look at next?
So once you've got an idea of the site and how the land lies, you'd look at creating your mission, wouldn't you? Creating a plan to get that mission flown. If we're talking hammer missions, which we are, because that's who we are. You'd go onto your hub or your planning app, and you'd plan your flight, your initial planning. That's not to say that when you get to site, it won't change, but at least you've got an indication of how you're going to fly it, where it's going to fly, and your setup. Your estimated altitudes, for example. Your estimated amount of pictures it's going to take. Even in that case, you can go back to the client and say, well, I've done my flight planning on my pre-planning app. This is what it's going to look like. This is how many photos I'm going to get you. This is how long it's going to take me. I'm going to charge you for a day. It's only going to take me 45 minutes. No, don't do that. Just say, I'm going to, I'm going to charge you for a day.
It's yeah, exactly. I think that's when you get into the details of the mission, that's when things start getting very specific in terms of, what is the data you're collecting. And as you said, understanding how long the flight might take. I think one interesting rule of thumb there that I've always asked people to do is to start with the data, some visualization of the data and deliverable in your mind, and then sort of working your way backwards. And I think there is sometimes the sort of temptation to, well, this is a map. Let's do a mapping job, or let's just create a polygon and create the flight plan, even though maybe you only needed a few pictures for inspection as opposed to a whole map. I think just understanding what the end customer needs and then fitting the flight plan to it, as opposed to making a map every single time, is probably a better way to go about it. I guess that's sort of, that makes sense. But then, when it comes to sort of creating these flight plans, what things should you keep in mind? I guess you've got your traditional top down or nadir plans, but then you've also got vertical plans now with assets being vertical, cell towers, facades. How do you make sure you create the right flight plan before you leave the office?
I mean, you've got to take safety into mind, as we spoke about in our previous podcast last week. With the facade mission, safety is a huge aspect. You have to make sure that the area where you are looking to take off and land is a safe spot. Your actual flight, your flight's going to be safe. You know, creating the mission, you know, you may be looking at, you know, pulling the data in from a KML file, for example. You know, it all depends. It all boils down to where you're flying, and you know, the obstacles that sit in the way.
Yeah. And speaking of KML files, though, I think KML files are both a blessing and a curse for our industry, because it's just like, it's great they exist, but there's so many different formats and
Yeah,
so many different ways in which people want to import these into flight planning software.
yeah. And a lot of
It's
people are using them, right? You know,
yeah,
we as a you know, an automated drone software house, we've had a lot of people talking about KML files, and subsequently we've written a few articles on KML. But you know, prior to me working for Hammer, I'd obviously heard of them, but I'd never used them.
mm,
I'd never used a KML file, and they are handy,
mhm.
but you know, on the flip side, they are a burden.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where Google's defined this format to use, and then they keep changing the format, and you
Google
know,
changing their
yeah,
mind?
yeah.
Never. They
Never.
never do that.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, obviously,
Other search engines are available, of course.
yeah,
Not that
we're right,
anyone uses another search
and they've
engine.
also probably got, you know, a pretty big share of the market when it comes to the map side of it as well.
Yeah,
So you know, they're
they
able
have
to,
indeed.
yeah, they're able to inform, yeah, KML files formats. But yeah, it's basically what we have at the moment is the best thing, even though you can configure and sync your missions. So you know, at least in Hammer, we're trying to sort of get away with files as much as possible.
Yeah,
But they still remain
they're
from
still there
they're
lurking.
still there. Yeah, lurking.
KML
Yeah,
files lurking in the background.
yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah. So okay, let's say you've got your KML file, you created your perfect mission. I guess you've got to next configure the mission with the right parameters. You've got to.
well, yes and no. You've got to configure them with the parameters that you think are suitable for that mission. As I
Mhm,
said earlier, you know, you might get to the field and find that, you know, the map you've got's out of date and there's a tree in the way, for example, or you've got a height restriction which you can't see on the map because you haven't been able to go there to do a pre-site survey.
mhm.
So, you know, you'd configure your parameters as best you can, you know, albeit sort of, you know, altitude, you know, if you're doing a facade, for instance, you know, your top height, your bottom height, um, your speed, how many pictures you want. You're only going to get a full understanding of your inspection when you actually get to site.
Yeah,
No point in, you know, pre-plan all day,
yeah,
every day,
yeah,
but don't expect to just rock up to site and go, I'm going to fly this,
yeah,
because there's always things in the way,
yeah,
even if it's just for peace of mind when you get there. It's nothing worse than turning up to a site and going, you know, oh, I didn't know
yeah,
that was there. I didn't see that power line that's going straight across the building, because you wouldn't do from a
yeah,
top down.
yeah,
So yeah, pre-plan your mission, pre-plan your configuration, put it all in, but expect to make changes when you get to site.
yeah. Yeah, I think in some sense, when you do the mission plan or the flight plan in the office, I think there's probably two main reasons for doing it in the office. As I see it, I think you've got the first, it helps you build a mental model of what's going to happen
That's right.
on site. So, you know, you understand where the drone is going to take off, what might be the start point for the drone, what might be the battery change points. You know, you
Yep.
have some level of an understanding, so that it's not a complete surprise on site in terms of the operation. And I think the second thing is that you can probably get feedback on your flight plan if you wanted to, if this was an operation in an in-house drone team,
Yeah.
you could sort of send a link to the flight plan to somebody on your team and say, well, look, I'm planning to fly this. Does this look okay? You know, have you got any suggestions for how you might want to have the data? You know, so it's sort of collaborative in that sense where you can do this in the office before you're on site, because when you're on site, it's really hard to sometimes communicate to a team in the office.
Yeah, I think with pre, you know, where I've done that before with Hammer. And I've had to ring you when I've been
Yeah.
on site and go, this doesn't quite look right.
Yeah.
And that's all down to, that was the early days, obviously. That's all down to pre-planning.
Yeah.
And you're very understanding, so thank you.
Yeah, but it's just, like we can actually do a lot of these things in the office now, which
Yeah.
is great. And, we could be in different buildings as well. And you could create a flight plan and you could send it to me as a link and I could just see it on my side. And if I wanted to make some changes, it's like a Google Doc, essentially.
Well, again, you say different building, it could even be different countries.
Yeah,
that's
true.
I could be sat on a beach in Barbados and say, Varun, we need to fly this, but obviously I can't do it because I'm sunning myself in Barbados. But here's the flight plan. Go out and do your thing. It's cloud-based software to God's sake.
If you're in Barbados, Alex, I don't think you'll need a flight plan. It'll just be make it as you go kind of thing, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't need this cozy jacket I'm wearing either in my freezing cold office. So I'm not in Barbados, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, we're heading towards the winter, probably.
And it's going to be chilly. It's going to be a chilly one.
Absolutely.
So I guess another way of not securing, but easing the pressure is to simulate the mission as well, which is something we also do in Hammer. You can run a simulation before you even leave the office, just to see how the aircraft's going to react when it's flying in a live environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just to be clear on what a simulation means, it's not kind of a physics simulation which tells you exactly what the drone's rotor is going to do at X second during the flight. But by simulation we mean we can show you what the drone's position is going to be, what its flight path is going to be, what its orientation is going to be, and sometimes just understanding those high-level metrics for your flight are good enough.
It gives you a good indicator of what to expect when you get to the field.
Yeah.
Apart from the power lines and the possible tree that might be in the way, but it gives you a simulated view of what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because one of the things that always comes to my mind is that in some sense, we don't have that information because nobody's done a drone flight or a 3D model or some form of an updated survey of that site.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, we won't have this problem because there's just going to be so much data captured. You could probably just get real-time information on real-time information on that site. And
I guess that's the beauty of doing the same site over and over again, is that you do collect this data, and that data can be very, very useful, however you use it in the future. For example, you could use it as a pre-flight plan. You can import it into your flight software and say, well, I've flown this before. This is what it was like before. Let's go and capture it again. This is what it's like now. And it will build we're talking future stuff now. We've gone off the handle. But you know what I mean? We've spoken about this before.
And we're seeing some businesses implement this. So we've seen teams that are essentially requesting things where, they want to create flight plans from an existing 3D model as opposed to, Google Maps, because they've already done a couple of flights on that site. And now it's their third or fourth flight. So they just want to use their own 3D models.
Their data will be way more accurate than Google's.
Yeah.
Sorry, Google.
They will have their own KML file at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. They start producing their own.
So that's interesting. So when you get to the site, I mean, we've been talking about planning, right? You get your plans as detailed as possible and as correct as possible. And then when you get to the site, then you basically have to just start the mission, basically make the bird fly, and monitor what happens during flight.
Yes, no.
No.
I would say, I mean, if you're very safety conscious, like a lot of drone pilots, or maybe a lot of drone pilots, or I don't know. I'm very safety conscious. And I think there may be, I've not been to that site before. I've not seen it. Like the mill, for example, I've flown the mill loads of times, so I know what to expect when to turn up. But if I was going to a new site, I'd do my pre-planning, I'd get there, and I would probably walk the site, just have a look, make sure, everything was as I expected it to be. You may even want to take the drone up and check your altitudes.
Yeah.
Take the drone up above the building and go, okay, cool. So I got it roughly right. It's 62 feet. And then you can adjust in app to the exact specifics you want. The plan's already in place. You haven't got to replan it. You've just got to change some of the attributes of the plan.
And you check the site, but you also check the drone, right? So whether it's calibrated, whether it's got, the camera's working fine, all the sticks are working fine. I guess there's just so many pre-flight checks.
Pre-flight checks. Make sure your props have no cracks. Make sure your battery's fully charged. You make sure you've got plenty of GPS. Everything in place before you take that aircraft off the ground.
Yeah. And let's say everything works fine. Then you basically load up your flight plan, press play, and hope for the best.
Hope for the best. No. You'd load up your plan. Obviously, Hammer runs through a pre-flight checklist anyway before it takes off. You go through that. You don't just take off and put as we've said many times, take off, put your controller down, sit back and have a cup of tea or a can of Coke. But I haven't got a can of Coke with me today, so I can't hold it up to the screen, which is a shame. I drank it earlier. So I mean, you can fly your mission, but stay hands-on.
100%.
100% hands-on. You never know what may occur. I mean, I go back to the mill all the time because it's our little secret site. But the amount of pigeons that live in the mill, the aircraft goes up, starts its flight, and 500,000 pigeons fly out. And 9 times out of 10, they don't get very near it. But it's better to be safe than sorry. Keep your hands on the sticks. Hands on the sticks. One finger hovering over that pause button.
All the time. So I think that's one of the things that people get wrong is that the automation is just to collect high quality data. It's not to automate the role of the pilot. It's just two very different things. And even beyond automation, there are so many things that go wrong. So camera settings, for example, is one of the things where I've seen a lot of the times where people will just have the camera in automatic mode. And there's nothing wrong with automatic mode, but there is an inherent risk in the auto exposure mode where if you suddenly have a change of cloud cover or change in ambient lighting conditions, the camera will try and adjust for that.
Stuff starts getting blown out of exposure. You end up with white blurs, all sorts of stuff.
Exactly.
So it's you have to be on your toes. Even though the drone, it's flying by itself and collecting the data, doesn't mean you can sit on your backside and not do anything. You've got safety aspects. Obviously, you've got technical aspects. And then when the mission's obviously finished, you've got to bring that bird back in. So as I previously said, it will come back automatically and land by itself. But I find bringing it back in manually, I have control over where it's going to land and how I'm going to land it.
And you're probably constantly assessing as well, right? What is a good takeoff? What's a good sort of landing site in case you need to land the drone, whether it's immediately or whether it's coming back to the takeoff point? What's the good go home altitude? There are all these sort of considerations and calculations you have to make in your head.
And then obviously you've got public ingress as well. You may be in an area where there is public. And the public always like to ask questions. Is that a drone? Which a lot of them ask. Well, no, it's a chicken. Of course it's a drone. A lot of people will ask questions. So you've got all of that to deal with. And obviously you still got to collect your data. You still got your client or your stakeholder at the end of it, where that data's got to go back to. So there's a lot to consider.
I think we almost need a t-shirt, Alex, where the t-shirt says that yes, that is a drone.
There are t-shirts out there. Yes, it's a drone. It goes 400 feet. No, you can't have a go.
No, you can't have it.
And etc. I've seen t-shirts with them on.
That's a good way to not distract the pilots and still answer the questions.
Exactly. You just go read the t-shirt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the mission. The mission flown.
Yeah.
Obviously, you bring the aircraft back in. You land your aircraft. You
Mhm.
check everything. You do an idiot check.
Yeah.
Make sure the aircraft's intact. Make sure you've landed safely. Make sure there's no people around. Obviously, do that before you land. Pack
Yeah.
them all away.
Mhm.
Time to go back to the office. Take your
Ooh,
data home.
but but wait, not so fast.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yes, pack up everything, but ideally you want to check the data before you go to the office, right? So,
Baron's preemptive strike.
yeah,
I
there we
like
go.
it.
There we go.
So yeah, I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, you check the data before you leave. It's the same with photography, and it's the same with capturing video footage.
Yeah.
You wouldn't walk away from a video production, say to the director, well, I'm done, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Because he's going to want to look at what you've done, unless he
Yeah.
trusts you, which then, the ball's in your court kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, if you've got a laptop or whatever with you, you can check the photos that have been taken.
Yeah.
Because you might find, oh God, photo 10's completely out of focus. Or it's skipped a photo for whatever reason. You don't want to be going all the way back to the office, putting all your data together for your client or stakeholder. So I'm saying stakeholder now as well. Yeah, so I've got that for you. And then going, I'm missing data. I've got to go back out there and figure out which bit of my 175 photos I'm missing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
data check on site if you can.
Yes.
Some people won't be able to.
There are time constraints. There are so many different things you have to. I mean, again, it's one of those things where you have to make the most informed decision possible. What is the risk of the data being not correctly captured versus the time loss of doing that extra thing on site? And also distance to site. If it's close by enough, that's not really an issue. Because you can always come back and refly it. But if you're really far, and you've got a big journey home, and if the cost of the operation was actually the travel to the site, then you basically double the cost. So
totally. So data analysis in the field, which is a long word, is worth doing if you can.
And I think software can help with this. So, I mean, it's one of the things that we're planning on our roadmap, right? So we're thinking of having verification methods for the data as the drone flies, potentially right after it lands. I think these are things that the Hammer app can check in the future automatically. So you again save time, but also don't sort of cut corners on verification of the data. And that's one of the things that is extremely important. And I think right now the industry does everything in the cloud afterwards in the office, but I have a feeling that probably a lot of it will move back to the field.
I should think it would. I mean, even to have that opportunity, that availability in app, so you don't have to take the card out of the drone. You can check everything in app after flight. Can you imagine how much time that would save?
Yeah, so much.
There's nothing worse than landing your kit, getting your SIM card, your SD card out, putting it in your SD card holder, firing up your laptop, plugging it in, going through all your data. If we had the option to go, cool, I've landed, let's have a look at it. Done. And it rolls through the data on app, and you can see it all there. AI checks it over for you, says, oh, maybe this one's out of focus, all these are okay. That'd be a massive bonus.
Even for 3D reconstruction, right? I mean, this is one of the challenges where you don't really know till you get to the office and you upload the data to the cloud and process the data till the point you get that 3D model out from the software, from the cloud software. You don't really know whether what you've captured is going to produce good results or not.
No.
And, you're basically just hoping that there's enough overlap and then there is enough sort of interesting features in this data set that you'll get a great model out of it.
On a wing and a prayer, you're hoping it's going to work. Or a rotor and a prayer. Probably more like it. More relevant.
More relevant. That's going to change. I think that's going to change in the industry because it's one of those things where I feel like, with computers, when computers first came out, we were okay with so many things that now we would just consider like ludicrous. Like, how
Yeah.
did we deal with this? Like, do you remember the first sort of internet connections where you had to like kind of wait for kind of like,
Oh, dial-up,
dial-ups? Yeah.
9.9 or 14.4 kbs.
Yeah.
You'd wait 6 months for a picture to load.
Yeah.
You could have drawn it or actually gone out and taken the photo yourself by then.
Yeah.
And technology's advanced so much in, however long it's been. It hasn't been long since, the 14.4 dial-up modem is now
a couple of decades, maybe.
Yeah, you've now got, a gigabyte internet connection to your house.
Yeah. There is no dial-up period. You just basically, it's just constantly on. Yeah.
A permanent connection. And, the collection of data and that will go the same way. It won't be long, and it will happen.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's like Terminator 2. It's all going to happen. Hopefully not the end of the world, though, eh?
But going back to today, I mean, today you verify the data.
Yes.
And today you bring it back to the office, and then if you're using cloud software, I guess you start uploading the data.
Yeah, upload the data to the cloud. I mean, once it's in the cloud, your data is available to share, with your team or with your client or your stakeholder or whoever. You could go on. You could, if you wanted to, you could report on that data on your client's behalf. You could then, I mean, obviously in Hammer, we can annotate that data. So we can go in and say, say your client's looking for broken windows, for example, on the side of facade. You can go in and select all the broken windows. There might be 70 photos of broken windows in. You can go through every photo and annotate that data and report on that data. So, you can actually send a report to your client and say, well, you wanted broken windows. Here they all are.
Yeah.
Every single window in the set.
Yeah. I mean, that's the power of the cloud, right? Because you've got this one repository, one kind of centralized place where all the data sits, and you're not trying to create copies of the data, send one copy to the client, one copy to the stakeholder, one copy, and also it's, we're talking about gigabytes of data per inspection or survey.
Yep.
And you can't afford to sort of move a lot of data around. So you might as well put it into one place and then just share links to other people so that you've got one window into the centralized store for the data.
Yeah. It's easy. It's held and managed by us, with the Hammer side of things anyway, which is easily shareable. And you can, as I said, you can annotate and report on that data. It's all there. Somebody can look at it at 4 o'clock in the morning if they wanted to. They wouldn't have to hassle their pilot or their data collector to get a copy of it. It's already there for them to see.
Yeah, and if you did need something offline, you can still create PDF reports with the right information in it, which are fairly lightweight compared to the entire data set. Because I would imagine there are, obviously in the industry, different people are wearing different hats. So if you're on the capture team, if you're part of an in-house team and you are the ones capturing the data, maybe the data needs to be passed on to a planning or an engineering team or kind of the inspection team that then just needs essentially where the actual issues are, and they need to. So it's sort of like a pipeline, or like a sort of set of steps, right? And you are in that set of steps somewhere. And
you're part and parcel of the team. You're just one of the stages.
Yeah.
I guess it's the workflow, the end-to-end process, which is what we've been talking about, is from, conception and planning right up until, handing that data over to your client might not even be the last step, because the client then might go, well, that report needs to go to XYZ on Windows. That report on bricks needs to go to XYZ. So it's just, you're part of a larger chain.
Yeah. And the same goes for we've got 3D models, or
Yep.
we've seen this from customers where sometimes they just want to see the model in the cloud, and that's great. Other times they might need the model exported into some format that can work with some CAD software.
Yeah, so they can put it into CAD and add it to a pre-existing design. We are, as drone operators and software developers, we're just part of the process.
Yeah.
We are part of the process, to make ends meet, end to end.
Yeah. There we go. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Because essentially, before drones, all of these things used to be done using conventional methods, right? And so drones are essentially lowering the cost of those conventional methods, but the loop or end-to-end chains are still very much the same.
Yeah.
So it's just fitting into that chain.
There's just no scaffolding or cherry pickers in the middle anymore. It's just drone operators and software developers.
Exactly.
Or software in general.
Yeah. Because at the point that the drone is generating that data in the air, that's the sort of start of that chain. And then at some point, some engineer is going, well, actually, we need to act on this facade of this building in this particular way. And that's the end of that chain.
Yep.
And, that's where a lot of value is being created, and a lot of things are being done more efficiently than how they used to. So it's really interesting to sort of think about uploading, sharing, and annotating the data and being part of that chain.
It speeds up the process.
Yeah.
Process becomes quicker with, I would expect, better quality results.
Yeah. 100%. You can't, I don't think cherry pickers or, any kind of other method of.
Well, you got a cherry picker or scaffolding with a man with a camera on the top of it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a book title for this week's podcast. I've done two, but I can't. It's too late in the day to think of a book title.
Cherry pickers, the forgotten land.
Cherry pickers and scaffolding. The forgotten tools.
The forgotten tools.
Well, they will be anyway.
They will be
at some point in the not so distant future. So, do you think we've done our end to end? Does that look?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, that's pretty end to end. I think we've talked a lot about the value chain and how drones fit in. So everything from capturing the data, verifying the data, to uploading, processing, and delivering. So
with a few future, few little future blips in the midst.
Yeah, I'd like to watch this in 10 years' time and see what we were talking about.
Yeah, see if we're actually talking sense or if we're talking rubbish, which I don't think we are. I think we know where this is all going.
I'm quite confident too.
Yeah. Cool.
Brilliant.
As per usual, if you can give us a like down below, give us a comment, and if you need to get hold of us, we're on team@hammermissions.com. And as we've said previously, it's now on YouTube and on all your favorite podcast repositories or directories, whichever way you want to see it.
Brilliant.
There you go.
Brilliant.
Nice one, Varun.
Thanks, Alex. Great to catch up.
I will catch up with you soon.
Yeah. See you later.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.